72% of salespeople say after they're hired that the job was misrepresented. It's not about picking the right assessment to hire. Companies get it wrong from the start. Hiring is a system. It's not just getting the right assessment.
They spend too much time looking for the technical competencies and not enough time looking for the attitudinal competencies.
What they never talk about or they don't recognize is, what about the belief system? I give him a very subtle buying signal. I go, yes, I'd like to buy a Goldwing. And he goes, okay, gives me a half-hour demo. And then at the end, he goes, this is a lot of money. You probably want to go home and think it over. And I said, you're right, I do. And I left. He projected his beliefs onto me, and he lost the sale. It was his to lose. You hired a cat when you needed a hunting dog.
Welcome to Building Your Sales Engine. I'm your host, Mark McGraw. Hey everybody, welcome back to Building Your Sales Engine. I'm your host, Mark McGraw. Hey, today I have Andy Miller on the podcast with us today. And Andy and I are going to talk about hiring salespeople, the processes that need to be in place in order to be successful at it. We talk about the OMG assessment. This is an assessment tool that we at Sandler and Sales Engine provide to clients to help make sure that they're investigating all of the DNA, even the sales DNA and the mindsets and the tactics and the will to sell of salespeople. If that's something, if you're either hiring or you're looking to evaluate your current team, reach out to us. Happy to have a conversation with you about it. Andy and I dive into this deeper, and I think you're going to get some great insight. So let's dive into the episode here with Andy Miller of OMG. I am here today with my friend and partner, Andy Miller of OMG, Objective Management Group. Andy, thank you for being on our show, man. I appreciate it. I've loved every meeting we've had, and we've had a lot of them.
Well, Mark, thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
Yeah, today, for those, I'll have Andy do an intro for himself, but man, what an expert on hiring, recruiting, interviewing, the whole hiring process. So we're going to dive in that today. We're going to talk about all the tools that are available for managers and hiring managers to be able to make sure they're getting the right people, they're bringing them on board right, all the above in terms of making sure people get efficient and effective as fast as they can. And that's going to be our topic together today with Andy. So, Andy, how about an introduction from yourself? Tell everybody and our listeners what you got going on and a little bit of your background.
Okay. I've been doing sales consulting for 35 years. What I'm excited about is part of the conversation we're going to have today is about hiring salespeople. I wrote a book called The Science of Hiring Quota-Busting Sales Teams. There's a shameless self-promotion.
Feel free.
And it's an international bestseller, and it's an accidental book. Let's just put it that way, because I've got a number of assessments that I've used over the years, and they all claim to do the same thing. Wash your car, do your laundry, and predict a successful sales hire. And I hired an organizational psychologist. That took me a year to find one who specialized in assessments. And I called all over the country. And when I found her, she was 5 miles from my house, which is ironic. But she specialized in assessments. I said, I want you to help me sort through fact from fiction, because I at one time I used 42 different assessments. So I wanted to know, how do you determine which assessment to use? So it was just supposed to be a white paper. And it ended up becoming a book on the whole hiring process, because what Tiffany and the IO psychologist and I both started to see was, it's not about picking the right assessment to hire. I mean, that's a critical piece. It's the most predictive single piece of the whole screening process. But companies get it wrong from the start. And it's like, hiring is a system. It's not just getting the right assessment.
And that's a question. I think it's a great place for us to start right there. And that is, what do you see, Andy, when you given the experience and the international bestseller on the topic, what do you see people get wrong with hiring? What do you see the biggest mistakes people make right there? Because man, do a lot of people need to learn some lessons here?
Yeah, well, the first one is understanding what the job really is. Now, I forget the statistic off the top of my head, but it's in the 70s. Let's just say it's 72. But I'd have to double check that. But 72% of salespeople say after they're hired that the job was misrepresented.
Mm.
What happens if you go into a company excited about a job and discover this is not at all what you were told? What goes through their mind? Now they're going, do I stick it out? Do I start looking around again? What do I do? Now, let's talk about why that happens. Did somebody intentionally misrepresent the job? I've been researching that. I can't find data on. I found one source that was unreliable, but it said something like 40% of sales managers intentionally omit important information in the interview process. I can't back that up, but I I think the bigger issue is people don't understand what the job is.
Yeah.
So it's not intentionally misrepresented. It's just a lack of understanding.
I could see too, Andy, and I'm sitting on 30 years worth of sales management experience at this point myself too. And one of the things that I've seen is managers just forget to bring something up. It just doesn't come up, and that's an important ingredient. Yeah, sometimes they might be reluctant to go full disclosure, but I mean, most managers, I think their intent is strong. But what ends up happening is something just gets omitted because there's so many things to talk with somebody through the hiring process, and it's easy to forget something.
Yeah. Well, there was one large, well-known company whose name I won't reveal, that HR had done a job analysis, they call it, 5 years ago, and the job had changed. It was a call center job, and the job originally is more like a customer service call center, and they changed the job to be more service plus upsell, downsell, cross sell. But they wanted to use the job description that didn't have the word sell in it at all. And they refused to change it because they'd invested so much time and money into what they did 5 years ago, even though the job had morphed. So what do you think happens? Now you're out there sourcing for what the description says. What you source is going to be wrong because it doesn't match what the job requires. Then they're going to show up to an interview. And if it's an interview with HR, they're going to go off the old job description. If it's an interview with the sales manager, they're going to ask questions and the candidate's going to go, wait a second, this sounds like a sales job. I thought it was a customer service job. And now all that time is wasted by the sales leaders talking to people who thought they were showing up for something else. So think about just all the wasted time and energy and resource to get to that point.
Yeah, all because we weren't clear on. It sounds like you're at least your starting point for what people get wrong in the hiring process is they don't understand the job, and so all for not understanding the job, do we end up burning up a lot of hours of managers and HR and everybody else. I totally see that happening. Maybe later too, we can talk about what happens when you hire somebody for one job and then you got to transfer them into another one. I think that's another thing that can happen. But on the front end of the hiring side of things, I've always seen systems are really important as well. Have you seen the same? And what do you think about the importance of systems and being systematic through the hiring process?
The system's important, but the elements. So let's think about it. If the job description is wrong, then the ad you place is going to be wrong. Your interview questions are going to be wrong. When you hire them and onboard them, you're going to be onboarding for the wrong thing. And then the manager should be coaching them, which most managers never do. And then about a week or two into it, the new hire realizes this isn't what I interviewed for. If you understand the job and let's throw a sales assessment in there. The OMG sales assessment is customized to the position, so it'll be customized wrong. So, but to me, it is the whole recruiting, screening, sourcing, all that. That should be a system.
Yeah.
That should be a system. That should be a process. And getting that right is critical. And I'll give you one example. non-sales, but I have a sister. She's in retail, and she answered an ad for a management position, which she's done for years. Uh, the ad was about management position. The interviews were about management position. She got hired, showed up, and realized the weekend do it. This was not a management position; it was a clerk
Mm.
position. And she called me up and goes, "Hey, big brother, what should I do?" And so we had to talk through our options. And I'm going, this is what the number of salespeople I hear say the same thing is mind
Mm.
boggling. So, you know, the best thing you could do is get it right, systematize it, including structured interviews, scorecards, all that stuff. And it's a little heavier lift to get it right. But listen, you get it right on the front end, or you spend a year trying to correct it on the back end. You hired a cat when you needed a hunting dog.
Yeah. And
And I like cats.
And I've even used the metaphor too to take that even another step too. You hired a cat. You want to. I think as salespeople, there are breeds of cats. I mean, there's the cat in the house cat, and there's also the cat on the Serengeti, and they're
Yes.
both cats. But I think there's a lot of varieties of salespeople, and if we just keep with the feline theme there, there's a lot of breeds of cat as well, and you don't want to have the Serengeti cat in your house. That is a bad idea, but that can happen if you don't know what you're looking for, you haven't systematized it, you haven't laid it out. 100% agree. And it can be a heavier lift on the front end, Andy, but man, I think anybody listening would know the penalty of not doing that upfront work is high. The hours that people invest, the pain, the emotional anxiety that people have of, do I let this person go? Do I retrain them? How do I handle it? I'm sure you've seen all those things.
Oh yeah, and Mark, and I'm sure you've seen it too. So what happens? So they hire somebody who they think is a top producer, and then the top producer comes back and says, our website's out of date. That needs to be updated,
Mm.
or we don't have any brochures or leave behinds or anything we can send them, or I'm really busy with things. Can we hire a BDR for me? Or we need to get a database, or we need to get a tech stack. And you can do all those things, and you and I've seen it a million times. And the problem is, after all that investment and 12 months has passed, they're still not doing any better.
Yeah.
Why? Because we hired the house cat.
Yeah. It's excuse making as opposed to sales making
Absolutely.
at the end of the day. And so one of the things too, I think I'll say this. I think when people hire, they spend, in my opinion, they spend too much time looking for the technical competencies and not enough time looking for the attitudinal competencies. Because what you just described to me is a characteristic called excuse making. And
Yes.
if you look for that when you're in an interview with somebody, now you're looking for the characteristics of the person as opposed to what, a mistake that I've seen people make, and heck, I've made it too. And that is that you look for somebody with technical competence to go do the sales job and not somebody with attitudinal competence. And most managers who've been around the block will go back eventually and they'll say, if I have two people, one who has the right mindset and maybe lacks a little bit in technical, and the other one is highly technical but lacks in mindset, they'll take the person with the right mindset over the technical all day long. Fair? Agree?
Mhm. Yes.
So that's a piece to the puzzle. Anything else that you see that people get wrong on the front end of the process? I think that setting this thing up right is from the beginning is critical. So we've talked about the job's got to be well defined, well scripted out. The criteria for that, also that the systems need to be in place. You got to document those things, do that heavy lift. Anything else jump to you?
People want to take the easy way out. Um, they think you're going to write some magical ad, place it on LinkedIn or some job board, and the floodgates are going to open and all the top producers are going to respond to their ad. And there's a problem. The top producers, they're happy.
Mm.
They're somewhere, they're a top producer, they're making money, they're getting recognized for it, they feel fulfilled. Um, they're not going to job boards looking for jobs. Who's going to job boards looking for jobs? The average middle and the bottom third.
Mm.
So if you have we're going to place an ad and screen people, you're screening out the average and the
Mm.
bottom. And If you want the top third, then guess what? You're in the prospecting world. You got to recognize what does a top third look like, and then it's high touch and a lot of activity. And I don't know who's doing your sourcing for you, but if that's HR, how much does HR like prospecting? Right now,
If they
if you
did like it, they'd be in sales. Fair.
well, exactly. And now, if you have a dedicated recruiter in your company, is that recruiter dedicated just to salespeople, or are they dedicated to recruiting all kinds of positions? Because going after salespeople is different than going after admin or an engineer or accounting. Um, yeah, that's very different. So it's kind of a buddy of mine has a phrase: everybody wants to lose weight, but nobody wants to diet and exercise.
Mm.
And it's kind of like, if you want a top producer, guess what? You're gonna have to diet and exercise and pick up the phone and do a lot of outreach, and you're gonna have to nurture them, because it's like dating. It's not call them once, have a coffee shop date, and you're getting married. It is lots of dates over 3 years.
Andy, if we thought about the people that would be doing that work, I mean, I could think of HR might be internal HR recruiting. You could have external recruiters making those prospecting calls for those top talents. And I think you bring up a heck of a great point in terms of those people are happy. They're not looking for jobs. Those are the people you want. And you're really screening the middle and bottom third. I think that's my eyes were open with that comment for sure. The third person in this equation that I see should be prospecting is the hiring manager, especially somebody in sales. They should have a line out in the water for the relationships that they have in the industry and around. What's the most effective tools that you've seen on that side, or people, in terms of bringing the right candidates in? What's the best way to go source the candidate for that matter?
Well, let me back up 1 second, make a distinction, then I'll answer that question. Um, so the traditional way of placing an ad is a weeding out process.
Mm.
You place the ad and then you screen them, and you're trying to screen out those who can't perform, right? The going after the top third is a wooing process. It's a weeding in. So that's a wooing, that's a dating process. Google, I don't know if they still do this or not, but at one time they required their executive team to do a day of recruiting a week.
Mm.
That's heavy, right? But that's why they get the best. So in terms of sourcing, I mean, you can still do the job boards. LinkedIn's a better way to do it. Or if you're in a certain industry, they have their own specialty version of some kind of social network. That's where you want to go. But you need to know, what do they look like, and they're not going to change to come to you for a increase in pay or compensation. They're going to come because they want an opportunity, an increase in, it's a career move.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to be looking at, does coming to us look like a career move, and how does that look, and what people who are top performers would welcome that. So you're looking for somebody who's maybe, and I'm just going to make this up, maybe they're a 1-year sales manager and they're doing really well, or 2 years, but they're a junior sales manager, and you're looking to hire somebody who can grow into a senior manager role. That they would make a career move. Or you have an account manager or a sales rep, and I'd look for things like, President's Club awards, whatever they call them, some kind of industry recognition, some kind of proof or evidence that they're a performer. And then you have to look at, okay, so they're at this company and they're a performer, but how does coming here become a career move for them? Because that's the message when that sales manager, that hiring manager is recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I think you can look at it too and say, in Sandler, we talk about the qualification criteria as pain, budget, decision. I also think that people don't change jobs until there's some level of pain or gain. And you're referring to the gain side of it, that they see aspirations into a higher position. I think, a lot of times people make career changes too because of pain. And the pain side of things, they're unhappy with their boss. They're unhappy with the product that hasn't been refreshed or renewed, or there's a quality issue there. There's some kind of pain usually that they're experiencing that they are wanting to run from. By the way, you got to be careful with that, in my opinion, on the hiring side of things. You always want to hire somebody that's running towards something more than they're running from something. And
Yes.
it's very easy to go, hire somebody that's running from something that it's usually not as best of a long term. By the way, the best scenario, and I am preaching, but that I had this conversation over dinner actually last night. The best scenario is to be running from something and towards something at the same time.
Yeah.
That's your most motivated person. So I love that because it's pain and gain, and that's the reason why people make decisions. And it's no different in a hiring situation as it is in a selling situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Ideally you want both sides of the coin.
Yeah, and that's going to be your best candidate. I do love what you bring up in terms of there's a screening process and there's a wooing process, and I would encourage our managers that are listening. Back to your comment about Google. Man, have a cookbook, have a recipe for what are the activities you're doing as a manager on a weekly basis to be able to reach out to connections, retouch people that you'd like to hire someday, maybe not even today, but down the road. Stay in contact with these people. It's probably one of the most undone activities as a manager that could be done. It just people don't get around to doing it, but it's highly effective in terms of building your staff and your team.
Yeah, it's like that. Always be closing, but I would modify that to always be recruiting.
Always be recruiting.
And even if you don't have time to dedicate a day a week like Google, maybe you dedicate an hour a week. But it needs to have a rhythm to it, right?
I think for many managers, even a half hour a week on their calendar where they're going to do some outreach through LinkedIn, phone calls, emails, whatever it is, an hour would be even better. Even that amount of time per week would set them up so that it's easier for them to go hire the top talent. And when you hire the top talent, your life gets easier and better. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about the different selections. We talked earlier about the breeds of cat. Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's different breeds of cat. We have hunting cats. We got farming cats. I don't know if they're farming cat, but you get the idea. You got hunters and farmers. Tell us a little bit about what you've seen with the different types of roles and what we look for when we hire those different roles between hunters and farmers and the like, Andy.
Well, the first mistake is I see somebody tries to hire a hybrid that they're supposed to hunt and farm. And they're usually good at one, not at the other. I've seen lots of account manager positions that was really a farm position. They were expected to, it's the old land and expand, right? The hunter lands it, the account managers expand it. But too often they have like a customer service mentality. And they're really spending their time trying to make sure everybody's happy. And their commission rewards them for that because it's a retention plan. But they don't spend any time hunting, even within the account, because they're uncomfortable with it. And nobody's holding them accountable, even if it's just, hey, we just need you to hunt 5% of the time. They always get around to making excuses on why they're so busy, and that's the last thing on their list.
Yeah.
So you really need to split that and bifurcate it. It can't be one person does both. They're good at one, not at the other.
And some companies don't have the resources to do that, but I think the manager needs to recognize that this person is not going to be an A player, all-star at both skills, more than likely. They're going to be better at one than the other. By the way, the same is true when you have a manager that also has a territory and produces. They're going to lean generally to one or the other. They're going to manage more or they're going to sell more. It just depends on what they're more comfortable with. But when you have, two jobs, it's hard to get the division right in terms of the time allocation. And that's what I hear from you there.
Yeah, that's right. And again, could you have somebody do both? Yes, many companies do. They're better to have a team sell approach if that's the case. And I'm just going to make up the ratio. Maybe they have 5 account managers and 1 sales rep. 5 farmers and 1 hunter. Mm-hmm. But let the hunter be involved in farmer meetings, looking for opportunities. And usually what you get is a territorial thing comes into play.
Yeah.
oh, don't you come to our meetings, or don't you talk to that people without me? I own that account, or they told me not to let any salespeople come to our meetings or join our calls. I mean, I hear it over and over and over again. And it's like, well, wait a second. uh, Which team are we playing for here? We're both on the same team. One's offense, one's defense, but you're not playing for the client's team. You're playing for our team. So you gotta figure out. You got to come up with a system that will leverage the strengths of both and cut through that BS.
And Andy, using an OMG assessment, and for those of you who don't know, OMG is an assessment tool to be able to evaluate whether it's an existing team member or a new team member, a candidate. What are some of the competencies that you've seen that have the highest influence on someone who needs to be a hunter? Whether they're using the assessment or not, what are the competencies that they should be looking for as a hiring manager on the hunting side that's going to help that person ensure success?
Okay, that's a good question. So OMG measures what we call 21 core competencies, and they fall into three buckets. One is called the will to sell, and that is how hungry are they to be successful in sales. So that to me is they're willing to stretch, grow, get outside their comfort zone, get uncomfortable, but they're hungry to be successful. The second bucket is what we call sales DNA. I'm going to call that sales beliefs and a kind of a mindset. But those beliefs either support or undermine their ability to execute process and tactics. And the third bucket is tactics. We have process under that also, but it's the tactical thing. So when people say we want a hunter, think about, they usually name the tactical skills. We want them to be able to prospect, like a machine. We want them to get to all the stakeholders. We want them to be able to build relationship, and we want them to be able to consult and qualify and present and close. That's usually the things that you hear. What they never talk about or they don't recognize is, what about the belief system?
Mm.
So years ago, I owned a software company in the Netherlands. And this was before there was caller ID and all that stuff. I could not get my folks to make a phone call before 8:30 in the morning because their belief was, I'm going to interrupt somebody's sacred coffee time and they'll get mad at me. I'm like, okay. And yet I would pick up the phone at 8 o'clock, make calls, and people would pick up the phone. And they go, well, that's because you're American. I'm like, there's nothing on their phone that says American calling, pick up. Right. And I'm like, if they don't want to pick up, they won't.
So
So
true.
it's more what's between your ears. In Sandler world, we call that the head trash,
Yeah.
right? So it's the head trash that prevents them from in this case, hunting a half an hour earlier.
You're making me laugh. I had a client one time, Andy, who she said, "Look, I don't call anybody between 11:30 and 1 because they're at lunch." And I said, "I'm curious. Do you take lunch between 11:30 and 1?" She goes, "Yeah, I take lunch between 11." So because you think that you take lunch, everyone else takes lunch at the same amount of time. She goes, "Well, I mean, maybe." I said, "What do
Yes.
you? We run an experiment." 30 days later, she comes to me and she goes, "You've bought me back about almost a full day of productivity because she now has an hour and a half a day, 5 days a week that she didn't have before because she had blocked that off." And I think that's a great example of head trash, one of my favorite terms. And so when you're hunting, you got to have that right mindset. We were even talking before we started the podcast today of abundance. I mean, that's a phenomenally good mindset to have. Do you have a mindset of scarcity or abundance? If
Yes.
you have a mindset of abundance, when you prospect, you're going to okay, you're going to do your work, but at some point you're going to, move on to somebody else because the world is full of good prospects. You just got to go find them. And that's an abundance mindset.
Yeah. And it's so when most people are saying, hey, I need to hire a hunter, they're going, will they hunt? Well, okay, let's go back to interviewing. Um, they'll say they'll hunt. An assessment will help sort fact from fiction, whether they can or will or can. And then with your structured interview, you're asking for evidence of
Yeah.
hunting. My biggest client came from a cold call to a CEO at 7 o'clock on a Friday night.
But Andy, nobody picks up the phone at 7 o'clock on a Friday night.
CEOs do because they're still working and they're busy, and nobody's there to screen out the
That's
call.
right.
And and I was training them 3 weeks ago. I mean, this is his fourth company, and somebody brought up, well, do you still prospect? And then he piped up and said, well, let me tell you how we met.
Yeah, that's great.
So,
And that's a good example right there of head trash and how things get in the way. And when you interview, and I love what you just brought up, we should highlight that. And that is that it's not just the interview questions, it's also an assessment evaluation. And it's also not just the assessment, it's also the interview questions. It's a
yes,
combination of the two to put these together, and probably even those questions being asked by multiple people over the course of the interview process. So, somebody can say something one time, but unless we have multiple asks of key critical questions, people might mislead a little bit through the hiring process just to get the job. But if you get multiple people asking key critical questions and you pull those back out, that's the value of having a system, because we're all looking for the same criteria.
yeah. Well, so I'll give you one. This literally just happened this week. So I had a client who assessed a sales rep, scored very well, but was not recommended because that candidate was missing one important thing that was a hidden weakness that did not come out in the interviews.
Mm.
And what they needed was somebody who could cold call to the C-suite, have executive conversations, and sell big deals like enterprise-wide deals. He had trouble discussing money, and his own shopping habits were he liked to shop around, comparison shop, and think it over. So, what do you think is going to happen when somebody in the C-suite that he gets to them and they say they want to think it over, and he's going to go, "Of course, that's what I would do."
Yeah.
And now you have deals in the pipeline that aren't closing. I call it the forecast purgatory, because it just hangs in lingo for forever. And it's because he wasn't willing to push back on that. Like, hey, if I just gave you everything that you wanted, why would you not move forward with us?
And that's all about belief. That's the second piece of the three buckets that you look for and that we look for in OMGs. And that's the sales DNA. That's the mindset of somebody. And those are the capabilities and competencies that someone is looking for in that category of mindset. And they're really, if you're not looking for it, you're not going to find it in there. You got to look for these things through the interview conversations as well as through some form of assessment to be able to figure out their mindset, because they just don't walk in and say, just want to let you know, I have a high need for approval, Andy, and making cold calls or prospecting is very difficult because I had to take it personally. No one comes out of that and says that in the interview. And if you're not looking for those types of things as a manager, you're not going to find them, because, again, often I see managers are looking for technical background and technical fit, and they're not looking for the psychological fit.
That's right. And in this case, which I see a lot, this candidate had a great resume.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he interviewed well. He's in sales.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody liked him. I call it puppy love. And then that bias kicks in because they like him, and he seems to have the pedigree. And the assessment comes back and says, "Well, there's something here you didn't see, and we're not recommending him. And you want to dig a little bit deeper." And then they're stunned. It's like, okay.
I got an example for you too, I'll never forget this. I had a client of mine, Fran, who owned a company. They were number 3 or 4 in the marketplace. They got a lead in to the number 1 salesperson for their number 1 competitor. I mean, who wouldn't love that, right? And Fran had me do assessments on this person, and she came back terrible. I mean, he was shocked. I'm like, and I said, hey, we got to figure this thing out. So we talked a little bit about, Fran and I did, and I said, look, go back and ask these questions. He calls me back, Andy, and here's what he said. He said, I would have made a terrible mistake because here's what I learned. This salesperson, who's the number one salesperson for our number one competitor, is managing existing accounts. And she is doing a phenomenal job of selling more to business and relationships she already has. But she hasn't opened up a new door in 7 years. And I'm number 4 in the marketplace, not number 1. And I need somebody that's going to open up new doors. And so I would have made a terrible hiring mistake by hiring this person by only looking at the resume and not looking at the mindset, the belief, the background, and all of the above. So
Absolutely. People confuse revenue generation with ability to perform.
mhm.
And it's like, no, there's a gal I trained years ago in Texas. She works for Gartner now. And every year they would give her a brand new territory. And this is a long sales cycle. This is not a 30-day sales cycle. And every year she hit quota. And I asked her manager, I said, why do you give her a new territory every year? He goes, I look at the territories that I think are underperforming. I move her into it because I know she'll get blood out of a turnip. And I mean, she was incredibly professional. I mean, she would study her territory and the accounts and see where the opportunities were, and she knew how to do executive messaging, and she was a pit bull. She would not let it go. Very kind, but very persistent. And every year she would hit quota. And it's like, that's a top producer.
Yes. And I love the how that manager's using her because she's taken her skill sets and leveraging her skill sets in the territory. And maybe they've got somebody else who can come in and farm and do a better job of account management. Because by the way, willing to bet if you asked her to manage an account over a long period of time, her skill sets wouldn't be as good there as they are in hunting. That's just statistics. I don't know that to be true.
Yeah, no, agreed. And that farming is not her sport.
That's right. Not that kind of
Hunting is
cat.
her sport. And if you look at it, and this is going to sound kind of strange, but look for people who play at the job. And what I
Explain
mean
that.
by that is this their sport? Is it a job where they can get by? And there's lots of salespeople who can get by. Or is it a job where they thrive? Like the engineers who are engineers during the day, and then what do? They go home at night and they have little pet engineering projects with their 3D printer and their little micro metal machine, and they're building little steam engines, and they're geeking out. But you know what? It's their sport.
Yeah.
They play at night what they do during the day.
That's a great person. That's a great person.
Yeah. And so that's what I mean by do they play at the job? Because it's fun for them.
Yeah.
People do what's fun. They do that sport.
So true. So true. So let's flip the script here. And, that's what we look for when we go to hire somebody that's an account manager and that they're a farmer. I'm sorry that we started with the hunting side of things. So let's flip the script and go to the other side. What about the other side and the other personality when we look at account management? What are we looking for over there?
I think that one's a little trickier because that term is so broadly used of what is an account manager. Are they truly managing accounts, or are they customer service with an account manager title? Do you expect them to expand stuff or just keep people happy? So I think that's very different. So the first thing I would ask is for people to take a look at what are they defining as account management? And if it's really customer service, let's call it what it is. Let's call it customer service.
That's a great point.
Because the customer service is a very different mentality for them. The customer is always right. They don't like conflict. So even if the customer is caught in a lie, not that customers lie, but every blue moon they might, they won't push back on that, even if they recognize it as a lie. And now somebody else has got to come in and clean up the mess. If it's truly an account management, if it's truly the land and expand approach, so they are expected to expand, I would look for moderate hunting ability. I would look for great at relationship. Now, here's the crazy thing on relationship. Every account manager will tell you they have great relationships.
Everyone.
Everyone that like they're amazing at it. And I go, really? And yeah. So I said, well, answer two questions. Has any one of your accounts ever told you like 2 to 4 weeks before they were leaving you that they were leaving and you had no idea it was happening? And they've all had that experience. And I'm like, that's not what happens when you have great relationships. When you have great relationships, they tell you things they don't tell their spouse, and they even tell you, I've never told my spouse this. That's those are great relationships. Great relationships are, hey, somebody internally is unhappy. Somebody internally is thinking we need to look around and do some comparisons of other options. They're calling you, giving you the heads up, because they want you to stay, they want you to win, and they're going to coach you. That's a great relationship. But if you're not getting that, you don't have a great relationship. You have a great acquaintance.
Yeah, they're not a good coach. They're not advising you on what's going on. Or, by the way, they may not be in a position of power enough to even know. And that they may have a great relationship, but do they have great relationships at the right level?
Yeah, and a lot of times the relationship is at a operational level, not at the business user level. And I always keep going, listen, would you go buy a house without involving your spouse? They're like, no, that would be suicide. I'm like, exactly. So you have multiple stakeholders, but you only have a relationship with your key point of contact. You need to have strong relationship with all the stakeholders, because if you go to make some recommendations or try to get some things done for the single point of contact, how do you know that's what everybody else wants? They may actually be an opposite opinion to what the others want, and what you do is going to end up being wrong.
Yeah,
You got to
we
keep those
sometimes joke about it. It's called OCD, one contact disorder.
Nice. I like it.
They got one person that they're dealing with in the organization, and they have not gotten higher, deeper, wider in the account. And by the way, for those listeners, there's tools around that. By all means, if we can help with that in terms of what we do, please reach out to us. But that's what happens is when people have too strong of a relationship with just one person in the business, or even one or two. So they really have to have quite a few in that cadre of clients that they're dealing with within an account.
Yeah. So to go back to your original question, I would say a couple things. Look at their willingness and ability to hunt.
Even for an account manager.
Hunt small, hunt occasionally, but hunt. Their willingness, let me rephrase it, that they're willing to network and get to all the stakeholders.
Okay.
Networking would be a more palatable term for account managers. So are they willing to network? Are they willing to get to all the stakeholders? And can they build really strong relationships, not acquaintances?
Yeah.
Because when I look at when people lose accounts, account managers lose accounts generally because they got out relationship. Now, it might be that the company made some changes. Well, maybe there's a new executive team. Maybe they got by private equity. Maybe the company messed up a number of times and they're sick and tired of it. But usually, if they're providing a decent service or product, and they're providing decent service, support, decent support, I should probably say, if they're doing that and they lose, somebody came in and built better relationships with everybody else, and they got out relationshiped and they lost.
And ultimately outsold.
Yes.
Ultimately outsold, because to your point earlier, and I think you're spot on, if you're not being told that you're going to lose business unless ... then we were outsold because we didn't have the relationship. And maybe you had the relationship, but you had the relationship with the wrong people or the wrong level.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Andy, we, on the OMG side of things, we work on what we refer to as the hidden weaknesses. And we can't get into them all today, but I think it'd be worth, if you want to pick one hidden weakness that a seller might have, what would be a hidden weakness that someone in a hiring position would want to look for through the process?
Well, so we measure 46 different beliefs that sabotage salespeople's ability to execute. I'm going to go for the first one now. Then I'll tell you a story that'll demonstrate three of them. Let's just go with need for approval, the need to be liked, and I'm going to call it the need to be loved or overly liked if we want to be kinder about it. But that need for approval, how does that get in the way of executing the tactical things we're just talking about on hunters or account managers? Well, let's stay with account managers. Their job is to network. Well, if they have a need for approval and they have that POC that you were talking about, and that POC says, don't you ever go around me, don't you ever reach out to anybody. If they have need for approval, then they will be afraid to network and go to other people. Okay, that's a problem.
They're afraid of that POC or point of contact not liking them because they did something that they told them not to, or that they've offended them somehow. And as a result of that, that need for approval, which is a hidden weakness, gets in the way. Seen it a lot
Absolutely.
too.
Yep. And that need to network or prospect is one. Relationship building. They need to get out and build a relationship with other people, but the point of contact is block them, and they've accepted the block, right? The ability to consult. So if they need to ask some really good, deep business questions, or they need to challenge them a little bit, and hey, here's the trends we're seeing in the industry. You seem to be a little bit lagging behind that. Can we talk about that? If they perceive that any of those questions might even potentially generate friction or conflict, they won't even go there.
Yeah.
Qualifying, they won't ask them, what are they willing to invest? Time, money, effort, or what have they budgeted? I hate the how much have you budgeted question, but some people ask it, but they won't have that conversation. Closing, that they won't say, if somebody comes to the account manager and says, hey, can you give us a proposal or price quote for X? They won't say, sure, I'd be happy to do that, but tell me what would happen next? Or why are you looking at that right now? They just won't go there. So it inhibits that execution of all those different tactical abilities.
Yeah, overly high need for approval would have to be, if it's not number one, it's in the top three of the hidden weaknesses. And I'll throw this out as well, Andy, and that is that if you meet somebody with an overly high need for approval, and they tend to be very likable people because they want you to like them, therefore they interview insanely well.
Yes.
They interview great. So you like them, they like you. Now, they can't ask a challenging question to save their life. They can't do some of the things that we need sales reps to do in order to go bring in business, but they're likable. And this is almost a curse. When people hear this, when you hear it, you're going to laugh. He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
That's a nice thing and all, but I tell you what, a lot of times that's followed by, we're going to have to let him go. That's just how that is, because nice is important, but it's not the only thing when it comes to selling. And
that's right.
So,
and if you use DISC at all, which a lot of people are familiar with, it's the person who's the high I in DISC. Yep. They're super nice.
Yeah.
They love people.
Yeah.
They don't like friction. So you have to be a little careful and scrutinize those a little closer to make sure that they've overcome their need for approval.
That's right. That's right. By the way, you're talking to me, just so we all know, we're all clear. That's me. But it's a learned skill to be able to put that and park that need for approval that's overly high. It's a learned skill to park that thing and put it in the backseat, without a doubt. So
yeah.
That's awesome.
So
yeah, go ahead, Andy.
A story that'll show you a couple different of the DNAs that get in the way. So it's one of my favorites. So years ago, I went to buy a Honda Goldwing motorcycle. I had the money in my pocket, knew what I wanted, walked into the dealership. Sales rep meets me at the door and says, "Can I help you?" I give him a very subtle buying signal. I go, "Yes, I'd like to buy a Goldwing." And he goes, "Okay." And so he walks me over to give me a demo. By the way, I didn't want a demo, but one of the beliefs is, do you sell the way you personally shop? So he personally would need a demo. So he gave me a demo. He projected that onto me. Then gives me a half-hour demo, and then at the end he goes, this is a lot of money. Another belief, because I had the cash in my pocket. And then he goes, another belief, you probably want to go home and think it over. And I said, you're right, I do. And I left. When I'd walked in the door with the intention to buy. Now, if instead he had kept his own head trash out of the way, and when I walked in and said, I'd like to buy a Goldwing, if he just acknowledged me and said, okay, I hear you, how would you like to proceed? I would have said, can we pick the color, the accessories, do the paperwork, and can I be out of here in 20 minutes? That would have been the fastest sale he ever made. It would have been a third of his quota for that month, and we'd be done. Instead, he projected his beliefs onto me, and he lost the sale.
Yeah.
It was his to lose. And that's just 3 of the 46 that we measure.
And the crazy thing about that is when that deal was done, he started with a belief that people never buy on a first meeting or a first visit, and he was proven right. You didn't buy, and you would have, but you didn't, because he created his own self-fulfilling prophecy by his beliefs. And those are the kinds of things that we've got to figure out, whether it's through the interview process or assessments or both. When we go through the hiring process, let's make sure we've got the right people. By the way, you can do the same thing with your existing team to go figure out what head trash might exist in the existing team. And the nice thing is that in many, many, many cases, but not all, you can train that out of them. Not saying you can do it in all cases, but in many cases, you can train it out of them.
Yeah. So I'll give you one other crazy story. This is an existing team. So they've got 18 sales reps, 3 managers, 1 VP. And we did an analysis on the existing team, and the VP needs to shop around. Now, other people on the executive team are going, why is our VP spending so much time negotiating price with clients? He shouldn't be doing that. Guess what he does? Every Saturday, he makes a list of things that he needs to buy. He goes out to 6 different stores where he thinks they have the best price, compares the prices of the things he needs to buy at all 6 stores, then goes back to the one where he can get everything for the cheapest total. And now they wonder why he's spending time negotiating with clients over having the best price, because he's projecting his own habits onto his client base.
And sometimes those habits are awesome and supportive to selling, and sometimes they're not. And it's up to us as managers and hiring managers to go figure out where our beliefs of our people are and go help them unpack and take out that head trash. So
Exactly.
Andy, as always, I started this session with us together saying every conversation I've had with you has been insightful, and I've enjoyed every single one. And this one did not fail in that endeavor. So again, I have a page of notes. I know our listeners do too. And so, Andy, I so appreciate you. The title of your book again, if you would?
It's The Science of Hiring Quota-Busting Sales Teams, and you can get it on Amazon.
Awesome. Go pick up the book. And in the meantime, Andy, we will see each other again. We'll have you back on the podcast and on our show. And so thank you for taking your time and sharing your insight and wisdom with us.
Well, Mark, thanks for having me on. Hopefully your listeners will get some nuggets of wisdom out of this that they can apply and help accelerate their sales.
Excellent. We'll see you soon, Andy. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.